No pleasantries. Hello. I'm sorry we're starting a couple minutes late, and anybody who's watching, I think Jeffrey Robinson says he's listening somehow on his phone from his car. So that's fantastic. So hello, anybody out there that watches this or in replay. And hello, Jane Fry's teachers. How are you guys this morning?
Morning. Good morning.
I see someone taking a picture. You tag me. So I know we're limited on time, and Sarah sent me some questions. Do you guys want to tell me your names real quick, please, though?
Yeah, we'll have to move the laptop. Ben, you want to go first?
All right. I'm Ben Davis.
Hi, Ben.
I'm Kimber. I'm the media specialist.
I have a picture of you with my book, Kim.
Tina Willis, 6th grade teacher.
Hi, Tina.
Hi, Christy Bullock, principal.
Yay,
Hello,
principals.
Assistant principal.
Nick?
David.
David. Okay, I'll call you David.
Hi, Carolyn. It's Teresa.
Teresa. There's Emily Francis, too, in there.
Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. Okay, awesome. So I know we're limited on time. I want to send you, I'm going to just show you, I'm going to screen share real quick and show you a document that Sarah was awesome enough to send me, because when we're limited on time, I want you guys to know this is a Google Doc, and it looks like you guys are in this document. Can you see that on my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So if we don't get to all these questions, then I can answer them later, or Sarah and I can hang back when y'all have to go to class and we can discuss them, and we can definitely share the link for people out there who also want to see them in replay later. So where did you guys, do y'all have a priority of questions? Not like I have all the answers or anything, but we can talk about stuff. Where did y'all want to start? Thank you, first of all, for getting the book, and thank you for doing that book study. And thank you, Emily, for joining us, and everybody who's there.
Excited.
Yeah, we do. So Sarah, where did you guys want to maybe start?
I mean, I know that we just got kind of done. They've been reading the strategies part. We said that was probably, we love the whole book, but that was what they were looking forward to the most, is the strategies, the practical ways. I put on one of the questions was about the choral reading for my kids. I only have 4 kids in my group, so it's hard to get them to choral read, but it's whatever. If you guys have any questions about strategies, or maybe
I could start by answering that question that you sent ahead of time, and then that might have people come up with a different question that's related, because I think that's one I get a lot. I have a very small group, and so how do I get a small group of like 4 people to do these strategies that seem to work with a big classroom? And it's interesting because I used to have, because I have such big classes now, and I used to have people say, well, I have a really big class and I see how you can do that with a small group, but I can't do it with a big class. And so it's definitely, to me, what the students feel with, first of all, what they understand about brain friendliness and what they understand about how a person gains literacy. The advantage that we have with students that are over 3rd grade is that they can understand metacognitive strategies, and you can explain things to them about how you gain literacy. You can partner with that kid different than you can a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old that we're teaching how to read, right? So the 2 things, the 2 big rocks, if I'm going to hack it always for literacy, is going to be sight words and phonemic awareness, like with the sounds of the letters, or what you need to gain. And I'm not saying that that's literacy. I mean, of course not. We need to teach them to analyze and all of that, but our kids can do that. What the big issue is that they can't decode text at grade level. We can read it to them and then they can engage, and as soon as they start getting the language, they can compare and contrast and tell us the author's purpose and all of that. But for this demographic, what we really want is to ramp up their ability to read independently, to decode text independently, so then we can help them with the same thing that we help all the other 4th graders, 5th graders, 6th graders with. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much.
So then my biggest things there in that part 4 for doing that, or what I do with my students that are gaining literacy, even at high school, is that choral reading, like we were saying. And so that they're not stressed out. We're all going to read together and you're going to gain opportunities to practice the language. And then a lot of times when we do that, we're tracking the print so that they're gaining sight words. You see that word 7 times, you own that word. I show them the word McDonald's, they can read that. Like, yeah, because you've seen it many times in context, and you own that word. And they need to, there's parts of that book, maybe in the previous chapters, where it shows you, do you read 1 minute a day, 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, how many words you see in a year. So I take students through the same thing I take teachers through. This is how much reading you have to do to really like skip a grade level in 3 months. You have to be reading 20 minutes a day or more. But I can make that less painful for you. You can read with me. We can put on YouTube videos and you can watch the print go across the bottom. We can create things together that we read together, and that counts, and so there's this thing about getting their buy-in, Sarah, even with a group of 4 students. And the best way I know how to do that is to show them other students who are gaining literacy really quickly, who are just like them. So I would point you to 2 videos. I'm going to screen share again, because if you guys get nothing else, you may already have this, but even the viewers, if you get nothing else, I would go to my blog and go to, here, I'm going to go to it so you can see how I find this on my website. So you go to salvac.edublogs.org, find my blog. It's on my Twitter handle and everything. And when you get there, you see this link at the top that says videos. So if you click on videos, I mean, there's blog posts, there's a bunch of modeled lessons and stuff in here. But if you go to the videos page, you can show your students so many videos here of kiddos just like them who are learning English, and students themselves saying, you have to read more, you have to do this, this works. The biggest ones, the most popular, look, there's Emily Francis right there, and her students are 3rd graders. Emily, have you used Person's video with your class, this one right here?
No, not that one.
So there's 2 right here that are like our most popular, and that's a kiddo named Hersan. He is in 9th grade, but we have elementary kiddos that really love this video because he's talking the first 2 minutes in English and then the last 2 minutes in Spanish, and he gained so much English in 7 months. He was not my student, but what he does for me when I interview him is explain to other students the power of reading and just being brave and just doing it. And then this next video is him 2 years later reflecting. Or you could show them this one of Nabil, who didn't have any native language literacy. You know what I'm saying? I guess I don't want to harp on that too much, but I can't underscore enough these videos of real students. And some of them are middle school, so they're closer to your age. But this one definitely with Miss Francis's class, right here, it shows students in 3rd grade connecting with us. I think it's just engaging for your students to see other students who are using these strategies and then reflect with them. We always do a compare and contrast. We use a Venn diagram. It's the first time some kids have seen a Venn diagram. They can get it because I'm doing it with them. I'm like, what's the difference between Hersan and us? What's the same? And then, they start to analyze, well, he believes that he can learn fast. Well, do we believe that? Yeah, let's put that in the middle. So you start to help them grow their own growth mindset, Sarah. And I think that's how you get a group of 4 students to engage in what all those other kiddos are doing. They just have to, you just have to be brave because you want to learn, and we can learn fast.
And I think that, like I said last night with our messages back and forth, I said that it feels like how do I get the buy-in? And I see these videos and I think about sharing with teachers, but then I'm like, oh yeah, I can share them with the students. I
know that's been my biggest mind shift is I'm training my students the way I do PD now. They can understand all of it. They're older. They understand neuroplasticity. That helps them in biology, but just to realize how the growth mindset and grit. I haven't painted my fingernails, obviously. I'm going to cut that out later in the video. But that's the thing they're bright. And all of you know that, right? We all know how bright our students are. They're just caught in this place where they can't express it, and they don't have all the literacy to sound as smart as they are. So we can help them down in the ESL classroom, or pulling them out, or part of their ELA time needs to be language acquisition time. We can help them express themselves with shared writing, shared reading. And by the end of the school year, they are speaking English. But they can start today. Today, they can start engaging in everything the other kids can do.
If I can take a minute and share my ELL perspective. When you said the grit, it's what it takes for your students to get that acquisition a lot faster, and the foundations, of course, and the love for literature. Because I didn't speak a word of English, but I just embraced education, and I wanted to read. Even though I didn't understand what I was reading, I was just grabbing dictionaries and trying to translate everything. But I think it's very important for our students to hear from other students. How is it that they've learned the language? I know you had your students, Wendy, in a panel, and she was sharing how she watches videos and she finds videos that have the text in it. So as she's listening to the videos, she can read it too. But I think it's important for kids to hear from other kids. How is it that they're acquiring the language? So it's important for the kids to see those videos.
And your voice, Emily, I mean, you lived it. You were in, you were in high school, and it's grit is what everybody, they come with that, right? And so we want to make sure they understand that most parents want that for their students, because, I mean, their own children, because it's such a predictor of success. But it's important to hear the stories, like you said, of real people, like you, like Wendy, like people who say, and then it's not just grit. They can't just tell them be gritty. That's a social justice thing. It's not up to the kid. They need to understand that, but we need to change our practices. And so that brings me back to Sarah saying y'all wanted to talk more about the specific strategies in the fourth part. Is there any question y'all have about one of those strategies that's in the book, or do you want to hear something from me on like my favorite ones or something like that?
I don't have any questions. I really want to use the roving paragraph.
I love the roving paragraph.
I can't wait to use that.
It's fantastic. Have you seen Kirsten Foti is out of Arlington ISD. She does it at professional development. Since she did this book study, she now can, has teachers go through a roving paragraph. It's a big favorite. So I would suggest y'all try that even at one of your staff development. I mean, at one of your meetings, at one of, administrators back there, do it with something, star results or whatever you want them to reflect on. Because that's a gift that you give to your teachers, because it goes back and it works in any classroom. And I can link in your Google Doc to Kirsten did an entire blog post on it and explains roving paragraph from her perspective. And then in Canada, there's a group of SIFE students up there. Jeffrey Robinson's group did a video. I'm not sure if they're sharing that one publicly, but every kid can do a roving paragraph. It's pretty fantastic. Let us know how it goes.
Well, that's a really good idea to do it with the staff, because so many times teachers are visual learners too, just like our students. So if we do it and experience and see it firsthand, then we're probably more likely to do it.
I think that's so profound what you're saying, because administrators can support us so much and it's actually the best way to run a meeting is to do the things you want in class. So I know your administrators are doing those things and modeling those things that are good to take back to the classroom. And so a roving paragraph or something like that, yeah, you're right. We'll learn it as teachers, and then we'll be able to do it in our classroom, and it'll make the meeting run effectively, right?
That brings in so much buy-in too, that it's a great strategy with all students. You've got your EC kids, you've got your ELL kids, everybody, even your gifted kids. Even if you're grouping them, their vocabulary is going to be different in those different groups. I just see it's an awesome strategy.
I just think that differentiation piece is, we need to give teachers a lot more easy, practical ways to differentiate. And there's some that are not going to be that easy, but we need as many as we can that are just like, here's an activity that hits everybody. Even, I do that language experience approach. That's one of my biggest ones, is if you're the ESL teacher or the person working and a lot of your students are not reading on grade level, we do shared writing with their ideas. So that's language experience approach. They give me ideas. We question in that QSSSA and I'll link to I have a video I just put out that shows me teaching my class doing language experience approach and QSSA. And it's a really bad example. The first one, I thought it was a good lesson. It's a really bad. And I almost didn't even put it out there, but I thought it would be better to voice over it and go, look what I didn't do. Look at these missed opportunities. And then I came back the next day and did it, better. Apologize to the kids for what I'm forgetting to do. And so that becomes a shared text, right? And we have 188 days in the school year. So imagine how many of these free writes you can have that the students can read because it's their ideas. Well, at this point in the school year, we're working on paraphrasing. You can lift sentences out of there and do all kinds of higher analysis stuff because now it's not a baby book and your walls are dripping with print. And my students loved this yesterday. They went back, they picked the poster that was the most meaningful to them. They had a partner they've never worked with. We went with somebody you've never worked with. They had to pull a sentence out that was meaningful for them and then paraphrase that sentence and then justify why that sentence was meaningful to them. And so these are very high levels of blooms now that we're having kids thinking. And then all the language, we used Valentina and Meredith Alvarez talking heads because it kind of takes the stress out of, I can show you guys a picture that it takes the stress out of me talking. I have kind of a script, but the script always has to lead into authentic language production. So it starts off, how are you doing? I'm good. How are you? I'm blank. What do you think we ought to do today? And then then the sentence frames go into them walking over to a poster and having an authentic conversation. So a lot of that stuff's not in the book. So I'm doing it in blog posts. It's what I've learned from people since the book. I'll screen share that real quick because I'm talking about high school kids. So if high school kids love this, I can't imagine your kiddos and how maybe powerful that might be for them. I don't know why I can't screen share right now. Here we go. Okay. So this is what it looks like. Here's just like not in the book, but I'm going to put it in a blog post next week. Can you see that?
I don't.
No?
Not yet.
Hang on. I didn't put share. Okay, here we go. Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so look how silly this is, but it's something like it takes, Valentina has a whole, Gonzalez, Valentina ESL on Twitter. She has a whole blog post she did about these talking heads. And it's Meredith Alvarez's work. She's a national consultant, and she came and talked to them about taking the stress out of having authentic conversations. So there's a lot scripted here, but then where the blanks are, where it says because, they're having to analyze which poster should we use. I think we should use this one. I think we should because. How about this one? Well, why? Okay, great. And then now on the back of this page, it looks like what we're supposed to do. And so then they go to the back of the page, and that's where I have other sentence frames about we chose this poster because the words I want to remember and practice more are blank. Here's my original sentence. Here is my modified sentence. And in parentheses, I put changed because we can't keep using the word changed. So everybody, by the time they were presenting to the class, this all happened in one 90-minute class period, they were saying, here's my modified sentence. Here's our original sentence. And one student read it, and the other student was like, here's our modified sentence and why we know this is a paraphrase. It's not the exact same words, they're different words. These are high level. They're language things, they're literacy things, but they're also meaningful things to them because these mentor texts we created together. So I can't say enough about making sure that you do that. And I mean, if you're the newcomer teacher and they very, very soon get into leveled readers that they want to read on their own, then you just got to make sure that they buy into the more you read, the more you can read.
And I think that was the language experience approach is probably one of my favorites because like you said, I think that, teaching these sight words and the vocabulary, I mean, we can pre-teach it, but teaching them only in isolation is not going to really, it has to be embedded within it. I watched a video.
I feel like I follow a guy named Jeff Anderson. I don't know if y'all know him. He wrote Mechanically Inclined. And teachers, see, I'm not their grammar teacher. I'm not their English language arts teacher. There are many that have to wear both hats. So then you have to go, okay, well, right now I'm supposed to be teaching this in grammar to all fourth graders, but I also have this extra time or extra part of my pedagogy that needs to be language acquisition and teaching about a language and the verbs and the order. That's not going to have anybody acquiring the language. They're studying a language. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's like us. Like I think about studying, Spanish. What I did for so many, in school, and I'm like, I studied the language, but I didn't really acquire
it. Exactly. And so, but here's the thing, and I think this might settle down teachers who are like, okay, have people going, no, but you have to teach them the grammar. And of course, I'm a writing teacher. So these kids can go through the writing process, and editing and revising that last piece is super important to make sure the reader understands us. That's the reason for grammar and punctuation, is so that the reader reads it the way I intend them to read it. So we can lift those sentences out, and I got that from Jeff Anderson. Lift a sentence out that they really love, not one that's wrong, and then talk about, why did you like that sentence? Yeah, it says boogers. Okay, what else did you guys like about it? It's something the whole class loved. Okay, well, let's take out the exclamation point. Let's take out the comma. Let's see how it reads now. And then you have kids mimic that. Those are the kind of things that I love for the writing process, but we need text that's meaningful to them, that they can read to do that. And so again, that's some of the stuff we're creating together before we can read independently. And then pretty soon they can read independently. I also had a teacher look at last week, look at one of those charts and say, you're switching verb tenses. And oh my God, I freaked out because I do switch verb tenses. I might say, I saw a movie last week and I love the main character. I'm going to watch another movie. We do that when we speak. So she and I went back and forth, and she had great points, and I feel like I had great points. But at the end of the day, we were like, why don't we just analyze that with the students? Right. Like, don't change that poster. Talk to the students about, well, you want to put it all in the past tense? Go ahead. Let's do that. That's a great exercise, but that's not how we speak. Does that make sense? Those are higher levels of analysis that our older kiddos can do.
And that all kids need to understand. Yeah. Every student in a class struggles with that, not just emerging.
So I was thinking, not just ESL.
Everything.
Well, adults struggle with that, right? People who are native English speakers don't know the English language, like studying it. Yeah. They've applied. Right. They don't know.
How boring. We don't do it because it's boring. I mean, out of context, just to be studying. I mean, I'm sorry, ELA teachers, I know you love it, and I don't want to say that your stuff is boring. I'm saying if I don't own it, I feel uncomfortable in it, and so I'm not, and so that's a hard thing to sell to a student who's learning the language, but it's important. It's super important. But like when I wrote this book that you're holding, I didn't worry about my grammar or my spelling. I wanted my ideas out there. We wrote and wrote and wrote. And the very last thing was we worked with the editors. And, of course, I went back and fixed up as much as I could, of course. But you hire someone because the last piece, it has to be out there. Grammar and spelling and punctuation and all of that is super important as that last stage of the writing process. So it's very powerful to get kids to put their ideas out there and then take them through the writing process and then show them that last piece that we all want to be better at.
And I think it's important to make sure that the student feels that the environment, it's a welcoming environment, that they are able to take risks. Because if they don't feel comfortable to write a word and they know it's going to be misspelled, they're not going to do it. Or if they know they're going to be judged by other students by saying a word incorrectly, then they need to feel safe. They need to feel that the teacher is going to support, that another student is not going to make fun of them, or just, coach them that it's okay to make those mistakes. And if you say it incorrectly, then someone can just correct it for you. And that's how language is learned. But they need to feel that as soon as they walk in the classroom, they can just leave that shame behind and say, I'm here to take the risk and learn.
That's that social contract. I think that's in the section 3 or 2, or however you set up your classroom. I think Emily has a super important point. None of this is going to work if they don't feel confident to take risks.
Yeah.
And if you watched the student panel last week, like you were saying with Wendy and Ali missed 5 years of school, and he's doing so great. And he says in the student panel, I know nobody's going to laugh at me. It's my class. He's like really just zooming ahead. And that the classroom has to be like that. And at the beginning of the year, we have to explain to our students, you can learn like the wind. You can learn so fast. But what are the things that stop down learning? And you set up your social contract. That's asking the kids, what would make you not want to take a risk? Let's talk about those things.
Raining heavy. You know, like students will say it's raining heavy, and your other students have to be okay with not flipping out and laughing because they're learning the language.
And they do. They laugh, and then you stop the class and you say, I thought all of you said, you know, Jose, why would you laugh at him? Because I thought you said, and here's your name on the social contract, you signed it, and you said you don't want to be laughed at. And at that point, everybody's looking at Jose and he's like, I'm so sorry. Because he's just a person. He's just a person and he's a kid, and we forgive him and we move on. And it happens less and less.
I always use social contracts when I taught, even high school. And all I had to do was walk over to the contract wall, and my scholars would self-correct each other. And this was high school students because they wrote it. They're like, oh, we messed up.
Yeah, but I've been in kindergarten classrooms, and the social contract was a big force. They made me sign and put my name on a Post-it note on the social contract before I could come into their kindergarten classroom, the 5-year-olds. And I was like, okay, I agree to all these things. And it said, we don't make our friends bleed up there. I was like, I could agree. I could agree. I mean, there were a lot of things, you know, but one of those, somebody there, the whole class agreed. And so they work. Social contracts work for all ages.
I like how you say that it's like, well, look, you said this because you're not just talking to the kid that may have made fun or may have made a comment. You're not saying don't do that in front of everybody. You're saying, hey man, you said that. So I think that's probably kind of along my style of teaching a little bit. I think it works better as far as classroom management goes.
Well, it's what's in it for them. That's totally different than rules for my classroom. And you start that social contract, the steps are in there. I don't know which page it's on, but I learned this from Joseph Maurer, and he had taken a training called Capturing Kids' Hearts. And the Flipping Group has a wonderful social contract, so we give them credit. But it starts with, how do you want to be treated? How do you want to be treated? And then how do you think your neighbor wants to be treated? Because you're going to gain English or math or whatever, and some new people might come in or might not. How do you think the other person? And then how do you want to be treated by your teacher? And, you know, what are your pet peeves and all that? So by the time you get to how do you think your teacher wants to be treated by you, it's finally about the teacher, but they've already reflected a lot on how they want to be treated by their students, how you know. And so then when they break the social contract, you know, we've spent a lot of time on a social contract at the beginning of the year, or whenever we do it in the year, a couple of days at least.
I think it will be important too for a teacher to do a self-cultural assessment before you do it with your class, because we all have our own biases. We grow up with exposures to different views and cultural acceptances. So I think we need to do it first before we bring it into the classroom and encourage our students to take those cultural views. I just think that's important. Doing I am, and who are you, and how do you see others? How do you accept others? What do you not accept from others? And I think learning and reading about other cultures will help us bring our students into that acceptance.
Mm-hmm. I have a lot of, in our area, we have 82 different languages, and just in my district. And then in my classroom, I have a ton of them. And every time I think I understand a little bit about a culture, a new kid walks in the door. And I'm like, I don't know anything from where you're from. So I agree so much, Emily, that it needs to be this open, a place of reflection and appreciation. And so I tell the students, I'm just honest with them at the beginning. This is my culture, and this is what how my family has tweaked the Hispanic culture because we live here now. But I appreciate culture, and I want to learn about your culture, and I'm doing what I can, learning a word in each of their languages. There are a lot of things you can do without freaking yourself out that you have to own all the different cultures. You just have to have a space open where you appreciate culture. And like Emily said, we continue to learn what we can.
I was just reflecting on, we've got a couple of 6th grade teachers in particular that use social contracts, and one of the things that they have taught their students to do to kind of self-monitor that is they give a delta sign when somebody in their group is doing behavior that needs to be changed. And so it doesn't have to be something that the teacher even heard. But I love when I see that kids holding each other accountable, and it could be any way if they're feeling disrespected or just anything that's going on. If they hear someone else, maybe it doesn't even impact them, but they just notice that somebody else needs to have their behavior put in check. They feel like a little delta sign, and the neat culture that they've got to kind of self-regulate that.
That's right. And I remember being a new fourth grade teacher, and that it felt like the peer pressure and the group and everything was going to be so hard to manage. And now I think back on that, and what you're describing is if you have a positive classroom culture where everybody feels that they're learning quickly, because everybody wants to learn. So if they're all feeling like they can be successful in there, then that peer pressure starts to work in your favor. Right. It starts, it can be a positive thing where no, we're all scholars in here and we're all learning fast, and that kind of behavior stops that down. So I have a sign for my teachers and that's fantastic.
I think our
There's noises in the
hall. Yeah, there's noises in the hall.
I can't hear it. I can't hear it. Do y'all have time? Do you want me to look at these other questions that you had in here, Sarah?
I think they have to go to their classroom.
Yeah.
Now look together.
Okay. Well, there are students waiting for you guys. So just know that we're going to go through and put some answers in this document, or we're going to go through this video and answer those questions. And reach out to me anytime. I love talking about how you guys are using the strategies in the book, and it makes stuff that I'm doing better. So thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
This was awesome. Thank you.
Y'all are awesome.
Carrie, have you done it? Yeah. It's
Not
really
with our staff here. I did it.
Alrighty, which one?
I think it's hard.
So, I mean, we can continue to talk about some of the questions that I put on.
Yeah, and that way, whoever's watching the video can now or later can look at these questions, and they're common questions. These are the kind of things that I get all the time. So the first one says, and we may have addressed these already. Let's look at this. Lots of our teachers post content objectives on the board for students. What's a practical way to incorporate language objectives into this? So I talk about this in training a lot, that not just having a content and language objective, posting it is a visual that students need, especially English learners. That helps every student. And there's tons of research around framing your lesson and making sure that, going over that before you start your lesson. There's a lot of research that achievement goes up if they just know what we're going to do today. And so I appreciate that you're interested in how to make it practical to have a language objective. So, and tell me if I'm answering your question, like if you're new to language objectives or you don't know how to practically put one together, I would suggest a language objective. First of all, you can get very scientific about it, and you can Google language objectives, and there's a whole lot, anything, PSYOP, Jenna Chavarria, all of that. There's so much work out there where you can learn more about language objectives and how powerful they are. And so I've worked for a while now where it's not required. And if I don't do it, my lesson does not go as well as it would have. So I always have a language objective. And here's this might make people cringe, but this has been very powerful for me. A language objective can be a speaking, listening, reading, or writing goal that's tied to your content objective. That's kind of a simplified way of saying it. So I'm looking at my students. The language objective is going to be different for third period versus fourth period versus fifth period, maybe, because I have different students who have different language levels there, right? Oh, hey, is Emily still with us?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. I'm screen sharing, so I was like, oh, I'm going to be so sad if I didn't say bye to Emily. Okay. So, and Emily, I would hope you would chime in too with whatever you guys know about language objectives. Yeah. So let's say, go ahead. What?
I think the thing about language objectives, my time as an administrator in the different roles, people see it as a compliance issue, not a tool. And I think when I train people on language objectives, I want them to understand I'm not seeking compliance for observation. I want it to be a tool as an instructional leader, that they're making sure that they have their students in one of those domains. And I think that that's a big piece of making language objectives user-friendly for faculty to understand, and move it away from that observation mindset and to use it as instructional leadership to improve one of those domain usage for the curriculum.
Right. And that's like what I was explaining, exactly right. So I feel what you're saying, because I don't have to, it's not a compliance issue for me now, but it's a high impact thing that changes the outcome of, of what the students gain that day. And those kids can get by me. We're doing such great, awesome things in my classroom. They can get by me, and we didn't meet a common goal that I thought about to make sure that the content objective was met in the way that we want it to be met. Does that make, yeah, I think that makes sense. So they could get by me, and I don't see, if you have a language objective, you can even relax on how much native language they're using, because we're doing a lot of language experience approach and sentence frames. So I know they're producing language every day in my class in the target language, but I don't have to worry about how much native language, because we have a language goal every day. And over 188 days, heck, if they had one in every period or every subject, that's a lot of language, focused language tied to your content objective. You will move their English. So here's my practical, when administrators ask, how do we just get it started? And that seems to be the key, like what you're saying, Teresa, is let's just get it started so that you see the power of it, and then you can start to refine it and, and really tweak. And we have a language goal, and I know WIDA and all of the proficiency goals have like share in cooperative groups. That's a goal that we want. A language goal, a speaking goal is we want our students to share in cooperative groups. Now, there might be students in my class that need phonemic awareness or need different things, but maybe I just want to start with one where I can think of how are my students going to produce language. So I always suggest a speaking goal or a writing goal. And the reason that I do that is because they have plenty of opportunities to listen to me, to listen and to read if they're really reading. Not that those aren't important, but if you're going to put a language goal that you want to be able to measure and see, let's do speaking or writing, just to get in the habit of having students speak and write more in my class. So then I would suggest at least a ticket out. And a lot of our teachers do a ticket out. And if you put a sentence frame on the ticket out, like let's say that you're doing the difference between rivers and or different landforms. I know the difference between a plateau and or like a democracy and a republic is what I always, any kind of compare and contrast. I know the difference between blank and blank is blank. So there's the sentence frame. You could put the word because if you want them to justify even. And so that sentence can be your language objective. That's your language goal, is that we will in writing explain, let's say your content objective was explaining the difference between, these two systems of government. So then how do I know we hit a home run? It's if all the students can say the difference between blank and blank is blank. So you could make that a ticket out. If you want a writing goal, we're going to write this using this language. I know the difference between blank and blank is blank. I know this because, or you could make it a speaking goal and say share in cooperative groups. I will speak to my partner using this language. And so those are like every teacher wants a formative assessment of the learning, and a ticket out does that a lot. Or when kiddos are walking around talking in structured conversations, you're getting that. So just put the language they need, put the sentence frame there, and that can be your language objective. And then over time, you can start looking at your class. Now, this class really needs a lot more help with, phonemic awareness or, whatever they need. You start to look at the other objectives, and you can start tweaking that.
Yeah.
We have some, I know there are banks out there. If you Google language objectives or You can find a lot of sentence frames that you can use in language objectives. Sidelets has a lot of resources where we give the language objective and a sentence frame that goes with it, if anybody's interested in those, but you could Google and find those.
It helped me with my planning a lot. And that was one thing that I focused on this year from our shelter instruction kind of training and then our reading the book. I was like, there's one thing that I can work on this year. Because I know that, you know, when I was at my other schools, it was required. It was a compliance thing, but it's not necessarily right now. So, but I know that it helped with my planning completely. So, I don't know. I think it's a great thing.
It's a big planning piece. I kind of like, I stress about it a little bit because I want to make sure they have the language to do the task. And so you know, not stress about it, but it's as important as my content objective. I know what I want them to learn, but if I don't have them speaking or writing about it, I'm not sure that they're reflecting on it.
Right.
And then the one doing the speaking is the one doing the thinking.
That's
And
right.
the one doing the thinking is the one doing the learning. And that's Chris Tovani that I'm quoting, but I live by that. I want to hear them say it. I want to hear their thoughts on it. And so a language objective, if I pick a speaking goal or a writing goal, I can see that. I can hear that from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to that metacognition.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to put that in this document. So for speaking, you could have them sharing cooperative groups using and put a sentence frame in there that proves your content objective. And for writing, same thing, just use it as a ticket out. And then, of course, there are listening and reading goals.
For reading, I taught my 5th graders how to do book snaps.
Nice.
Reading, they taking a pic because they have Chromebooks. So we are using Google Slides. We take a picture of the part of the text, and then we insert Bitmojis or whatever they want to add to it. And
so what would that reading language objective look like or sound like for teachers? So that because I'm always in speaking and writing.
Yeah, when it talks about showing the details of the text, you know, that shows that you show details from the text that fits the main idea. So what is the idea of the article? And show me 2 or 3 details from the text. So we are using Storyworks magazines, and they have so many compelling articles. So they just take a picture, a snap of the part of the article. They highlight it, they circle it, they take a picture, and then they add whatever illustrations they want to it. I mean, they're having fun, and at the same time, they're just excited to share what they read. So that's
so your content objective might be you're looking into the text for text features, or you know, whatever your grade level standards are for reading. So I will, you know, identify the main idea or the way the author uses, you know, the way the author uses characterization or something in this. And then my language objective is with book snaps, I will show my reading. I will show my thinking of my reading using a book snap. Because you're able, I guess the goal for the language is those reading. You'd have to look at your actual language objectives for reading and pick one of those objectives. It has to be tied to a reading objective. And that gets kind of tricky because reading is also our standard, right? So it's our content objective. So how is it different from a language objective? A language objective is for your English learners to be able to access English and improve their English about the reading, not necessarily the content that you're doing today for reading.
So it could be words, maybe pull out the verbs, so pull out adjectives. That's a language objective. So that's not. You know.
What are your standards? Are y'all using WIDA?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Googling, and I think I'm still screen sharing. These are WIDA can-do descriptors. This is where you're going to get your language objective from. And so the one that Emily is talking about and using book snaps is going to be tied directly to some of the reading can-do statements. Yeah. So they have to be able to do things in reading depending what level they're on. And that's where language objectives should really start, is what level, what can they already do? And what is the next level up? And so the next level up, I want to do things and have them have activities that move them with language to the next level up. So I need to look at these reading goals, like here are reading goals right here. It depends if your student is in the entering, the emerging, the developing, expanding, bridging, or reaching. And so, you know, whatever these goals are, look right here. If they're going into the bridging stage, highlight relevant information in grade level text to produce summaries. So if you're doing summaries, and then Emily's idea of using a book snap and highlighting with the technology is perfect to show me that they're meeting that reading ELP. I'm sorry, ELP is Texas. That reading can-do statement. It sounds. I see why teachers get confused, and it seems overwhelming. And that's why when you ask how to do it in a practical way, I'm like, let's just start with a speaking goal. And then once you get more proficient with making sure kiddos are meeting those goals, then go look even more deeply at your can-do statements and how can I be creative about helping the students meet these. And I love Emily's example of a book snap. Everybody loves it. And now they're doing Google Slides. What's that?
We use it as adults.
I know, we love it. Why wouldn't they love it?
When I work with teachers and I show them the can-do, and this will, Emily and Sarah, with your campuses, I pull up the Cabarrus County written curriculum as well. So they don't feel overwhelmed. I show them how to use the written curriculum in our district with the WIDA standards and the can-do.
That's so perfect. That's such a great way to support your teachers. It's not this abstract thing. These are your standards, the way we have them locally written for you. You're familiar with that. Now let's layer on what kids can do, and then what would take them to the next level, and how could we get some language activities that are tied to what you want to do. So that's kind of a long-winded answer for your, how do you make these practical? But it can be practical. And I have heard that. Let's just have teachers start doing them. And, you know, don't get them overwhelmed. Let's have them start doing them in a practical way, a ticket out or sharing cooperative groups that's good for all students. But what we're working on in the beginning is that it's tied to the content objective. Because what we see a lot is your content objective is we're going to compare and contrast. And then your language objective is you're going to explain about, you know, using these words, you're going to explain about the landforms. But that wasn't your objective. Your objective, the verb in your objective was comparing and contrasting. So your language objective has to have compare and contrast language. I know the difference between blank and blank is blank. Or, you know, so that they can do that content objective. And it takes some thinking, but it can, if you have it practical at the beginning, what can all the kids do to make sure they have the language to do this? Then they see the power of it. And kids start to feel empowered, and you start getting more formative assessments, and everything becomes easier. And then you want to get more specific and more fancy with them. And of course, we always want to get better at how we do them. And best practice is to really look at your objectives. So I really appreciate, and your language can-do statements. So I appreciate that your county has layered those into the curriculum for the teachers locally.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the next thing? Let's go back to the document real quick. I'm not going to screen share, but let me look at it real quick. The next one says choral reading. I think we talked about that. You love how Nabil, and he is in that video, at the beginning of this video, I showed my website and the videos that are in there. So there's a video of a student named Nabil who learns to read with me in class. And you said, I love how Nabil reads the letter aloud and worked on it for a while. I also love how you had him circle the words that he did know versus the ones that he didn't know. And then this was the question about a small group and how you get buy-in from a small group. So I think we addressed that in the very beginning, right?
Right. But I really loved how because some people, we tend to say, oh, these are the words they don't know. But he was like, oh, I know this one. I know that one. Or which other ones do you know? And that just got the ball rolling. I love it.
And I was surprised at the words that he knew. And I tell teachers a lot, that's not like what you would do in a guided reading table. You wouldn't say, figure it out. And of course you wouldn't. But I'd had this kid at the guided reading table and a bunch of activities for months. This was a mindset. This was a growth mindset activity. And so, yeah, what words do you know? And then the other kid's trying to help him. I'm like, no, let's not for a minute. Let's let him figure it out. And he was so empowered. And the words, he knew the word wonderful. And then I look around the room and I use wonderful a lot, apparently. That's so great. I learned so much from
Very
Nobel.
careful the words we use and make sure that we're intentionally choosing high order thinking words or tier 2 words, because they are listening, they are paying attention, they're soaking it all in. So if we're never conscious and intentionally choosing those words, they're always going to be using those tier 1 words. So
right.
That
is such an important point, Emily. And so one of the reasons that my students really like that activity, that Talking Heads activity where they went, some of my real high flyers, it's crazy that some of these kids are still in a newcomer class. You know, we're at the end of the school year and they really bought in and they've been learning. And so they go to a poster and they're like, this doesn't have any words that are challenging for me in it. And I'm like, well, can we change it? Here's a thesaurus, you know? And so there's so many things you can do with that. But at this point in the school year, like today, I'm going to do one with them. I'm not going to say important. I'm going to use the word significant and tell them, guys, that just means important. And then I'm not going to say many. I'm going to use the word various. And it's similar, but I mean not just a lot. I mean several different kinds. And I use the word various, and everybody says various. And we keep writing because you have to up the dialogue as the school year goes on. And so doing those shared writing activities gives me an opportunity to, and even going back over the posters, gives an opportunity to bring up, just like Emily's saying, being conscious about not staying in the tier 1 words.
So two key points. And again, we're the advocacy group, right? So when we're talking to other teachers that are not in this linguistic mindset, 2 things you have to teach core content teachers. You have to teach core content teachers to save the students' work throughout the year because they throw it away. They need to pull that paper out, circle it. They need to keep their work. I don't know why they need to learn to keep it. They used to keep it, but they don't anymore. So they need to keep their work.
That's a good point.
The other thing is teachers don't talk in tier 3. Drives me crazy. So we have to get our teachers to speak the academic language. And you have to get core content teachers to understand that they have to speak the academic language they want their students to understand. That works for every student in their classroom. But you have to, that intentional piece, you have to intentionally tell your faculty, your peers, your grade level groups to do those 2 things.
Here's another video, because you make it such a good point. And we, for math, science, social studies, those content teachers, I think the way to appeal to them, or what's worked, is that language is what makes learning go deep. It's, yes, you're a language teacher, we're all language teachers, but they kind of glaze over when we tell them that. Yes. Because understandably, my God, their plate, if you go sit in some of the math classrooms, their plate is so heavy with content. So I think we can do a big gift to them by what Teresa is saying, by explaining language and having the students talk about the math and write about the math. And I have tons, I mean, there's a math teacher here named Joseph Maurer who uses a lot of language, and his underschooled and his low socioeconomic kids, is what I'm trying to say, they outperform our affluent schools if they're with Joseph for a year. I think and I have his state assessment standards, the before and after, and I have video of the students themselves saying, we need to practice saying it like this because that's how we learn it. So of course, by the end of the year, when they get to this assessments, they own the word circumference of circles. They own the words one key difference in a similar fashion, because he knows what the assessments look like. And I know we're not teaching to a test, but it's a great place for tier 3 academic. What's that?
Loading. Oh, backward loading, and we know it works. I mean, it's so important.
So then we go back to what Sarah said, is how do you make content and language objectives practical? And especially for a content teacher, because you asked about content teachers too. I would show them that video of Joseph Maurer's students and other teachers, math teachers, reflecting on just going over those, because you can embed in your content and language objective, you should, the academic language that you want to remind yourself as a person to use and have the kids use. So you don't have to be like, oh, I'm always going to speak like a professor. You want to model academic language as much as possible, but I'm not going to let them get by me without having them speak like this. I want you to turn and talk to each other, and I want it to sound like this. Let's all say this together. I know this is the circumference because, or homologous pairs. Who does it roll off anybody's tongue? So you have to have that in that objective posted, have kids practice it. And these are classrooms that don't have language learners. These are just for classrooms where you want students owning and talking and reflecting about your content, because then you don't have to reteach so much. And at the end of the day, at the end of the year, they own those, they recognize those structures in print. So I think that it's another case for putting that in posting and going over your content language objective. In fact, I'm going to put that video in this Google Doc where Joseph Mauer's students are talking about how this is powerful for them. And then a brand new teacher who tried it. Her first semester was bad. Her second semester, she tried a social contract and going over the objectives before she had the students speak and talk about them. And it was an incredible difference in her classroom. So she's talking about it too, and she's a math teacher.
Attention teachers and students. Attention teachers and students. All buses are here, and you may stream the morning news.
Hey, Sarah, would you share that document with me? I promise I won't change it.
Well, you can share it like just to be copied. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here, I'm going to screen share real quick too.
Hey, I'm an ELL, so I'm soaking it all in now, but I need to go back and read it.
But we all learn that way. That's what I was saying. We need to stop explaining to teachers about not stop, but keep telling them, yes, you're language teachers, but this is like the best kept secret. This is what will help, the way that we question and the way that we, what we do for our language learners. These students right here in this class, in this video that I'm screen sharing right now, right?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, so this video is where the students themselves these are Joseph Mauer's students and a teacher named Jenny Looney talk about, it's just changed everything for them. And so it has her reading, it has at the beginning, her reading, her objective. And then we cut over to Joseph's students because I was in their classroom without him one time. And I'll just make sure that video is in the document. And so it's pretty powerful. And that's another way too, because people say it's babyish and they're worried that their students are going to think it's babyish. Well, you show them that video. These are big 8th graders and they're not babyish kids. And they're saying, this is not babyish. This is what we need. Like sometimes we don't correlate read it. Sometimes we just pull words and make sentences. Because I've seen him go into his classroom and say, look at the objectives. I want you to find words you don't know. I want you to paraphrase the objective. Tell your person next to you what you think we're going to do today. It's using the language and looking at those objectives and making sure kids feel comfortable when you tell them to turn and talk or write about these concepts. They feel comfortable doing that.
I know it focuses me when I do the language.
Can you speak up, Sarah? I can't hear you. I'm so sorry.
I know it. I focus when I say the language objective and the content objective with the kids, especially in elementary, because I teach elementary too. I know it focuses me too on what we're doing. So I know that it's got to focus them on, okay, these are the words, this is the vocabulary we're using. So it's all, like you said, like metacognitive, like, oh my gosh, this is what we're doing today. Let's get ready. Right. If you do that in a staff development and you start it in the staff development and ask the teachers, so does that give you kind of an idea of what we expect for the next hour? If you know how to be successful to get out of here today, I'm going to ask you to do this and this. And most teachers will say, well, yeah, now I know exactly. Okay, so that's what we need to make that alone makes achievement go up. And then we're also doing some things to help the kids speak that way. I put my own son, Anthony, we were driving him to the other side of the district to the charter school. And when Joseph Mauer is in my neighborhood, in the barrio where I live, and we pulled him out and put him in Joseph's class when because I was going to his class to see what he was doing, and it was so phenomenal. So then Tony starts coming home in his algebra homework with very few calculations, but always he had to write a little paragraph. How did you solve that? I solved that by, and he's not a language learner, right? And what did you notice? I notice the x-axis goes up when the y-axis goes. We're not asking math teachers to teach writing. We're asking them to use writing to teach your math. Because Tony
he really, really loved that year. And it was really so much easier for him because he was analyzing the math in the writing and the speaking.
That's so key, because we have 20, 30 years of research. Our top students, regardless of their language or not, are the ones that can analyze and understand how they got the computation, and they self-quiz themselves. And so that's the magic. And we know it as linguistic people that people have to understand the language to understand the computation. So I just did a happy dance, Carol. Beautiful.
It's a happy thing. We all need to do a happy dance, because what teachers need are things that are practical. And we got to demystify some of this stuff. So when you tell a math teacher, this is going to have your kids analyzing your math, not just you standing up analyzing your math. I know you're the one that knows the most math. In my classroom, I'm the one that knows the most English. So it's very difficult for me to say, well, how do they take ownership and it be student-centered and all of that? And it has to do with those, giving them the language they need to do it, and giving and making it a norm in your classroom that they reflect. And if nothing else, put in the content and language objective, how you want them to talk about it. And it starts to go in the right direction. That's a very practical thing. Everybody should have an objective for their class, right? Yeah. Nobody's going to dispute that. Yeah. Well, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, what am I? But we all need to know what our goal is for the day. Then the next step is making sure the kids know what the goal is. And then the next step is making sure they have the language to do that. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
Just intentionality. Like you hope teachers have that. And for those, but I mean, for those of us that live going in and out of teachers' classrooms,
Yeah. And if they don't, it's all about, I would hate for you to come and see me my first few years of teaching. I was lucky to be there. Oh my gosh, to come back every day. So I've been in.
I remember my first few years straight out of college teaching at 21. Yeah, I'm a high school.
Nobody's out there trying to not do it right. And nobody's out there to, everybody got in it to help kids. So then how do we help teachers do those high impact things that work for all kids, that don't add one more thing to their plate? My gosh, I feel that this year so much back in the classroom. I need things that aren't extra. I need things that are high impact, that every single kid, like my son, it's gonna propel his learning. But it works for my sight kids.
I think my passion, and Emily and Sarah can tell you, when I lead PD, I model how I would want it to be in a classroom. Right. I lead PD as a classroom, and they experience they experience the activity as the students would. And you mentioned that earlier. And I think I always share with people don't roll out of bed wanting to do a bad job. We have to give them tools. We have to give them the tools to know how to achieve. And we've got 30 warm bodies that learn differently. Typically in our classrooms, our numbers are high, right? You have to give them tools to know how to do that. And gosh, Carol, we use you as a resource probably far greater than you could ever imagine through Twitter and your blog.
You just made my day. Okay, I'm forwarding this directly to John Seidlitz, but go ahead. He's my boss.
I mean, I went and trained all the principals. I'm like, buy this book. This is what I can tell you. Buy this book.
It's incredible because we wrote it and we thought, well, how many teachers of underschool kids are there out there? John said, we're not going to make a lot of money on this and it's not going to sell a lot of copies, but it needs to be written because it needs to be in the field. He knew I was in a classroom and I didn't have the resources. So he was like, well, let's just make the resource. And it's just good for the world. He's he's that kind of person. He's a fantastic person. And then it's become one of our biggest, most popular books because people are like, wait a minute. This is what every single student needs and every single teacher. And so I'm so honored. And Anna Mattis, I know, feels the same way, my co-author, that, wow, what a great thing to have teachers turn around and say, this is changing a lot for our building. Absolutely. And so thank you for that.
Shout out to Sarah and Emily. I mean, I'm lucky because I have great faculty to work with. because for a teacher to organize this at a school and she's itinerant, come on. Like,
come on. Come to Texas. I'm a Steeler.
all of us. We can't take this with you.
Or I am coming there. I was going to say, I'll come there. Valentina and I both are doing workshops this summer, and I would love it. I know mine is July 26th. I believe hers is June 16th in North Carolina. And right now there are scholarships. So you could come and see us for free. So
I serve on the advisory council for North Carolina's English learners. So I'm with Ivana and Satley and all of them. So I see them often at our advisory council meetings. And so it's exciting to have both you and Valentina come to North Carolina. And, you know, district-wise, we're always supportive of what our teachers want to do. It's just we're not funded very well. So those scholarships are great.
They are.
And we as a district have support, but not financially like we need to in Cabarrus County. We have 28 teachers serving 2,100 direct serve English learners.
Goodness gracious.
Well,
yes, I would really encourage this content teachers too to please come.
We
because
do. Pushing it out.
That day, that boosting achievement day that I'm going to do, I mean, it's, you know, we spend time just like we did today talking about how does this work in the ESL classroom and how does it work for the pull-out teacher and how does it work for the content teacher. And we make sure that the entire day is, even if this is not, if we're talking about what you're doing in your content class, the other teachers benefit from that, either by the activity or just understanding what's happening so that we can all work in conjunction. But even just everybody walks away with tools that they can use tomorrow in any classroom. Yeah. So I really hope we see a lot of people in.
I think it's going to have big momentum. I do.
Yay! Yay! Okay. Well, anything else that you guys need? My class starts in about an hour, so I'm gonna need to head over to the school. I live right down the street from my school.
You're out of bed looking that good on a Friday, Carol.
Right. Yeah, right.
Oh, perfect.
I have pajama pants on. That was what you didn't see.
Oh, funny. I love you.
This has been such a pleasure and extra special because it is you, Sarah, and you, Teresa, and Emily Francis, who's in the book. And we're all indebted to you, Emily.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah, always.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for doing this. This is definitely if I would have walked into Martin Van Buren when I came to this country with this book in hand, it would have been so much different for my teachers to serve me. You know, it would have changed my world, my learning. So having your teacher, Sarah, learn from this book, it's not just going to change that student that they have right now. Think about the later years. I mean, they're going to have more students that we're impacting, and those teachers look fired up. They're going to tell other teachers.
They are. And you had admin, you had administrators.
Wow, that's even better. So
they're awesome. They're rock stars. Our admins that come to these trainings, I have I have my principal certification just for no other reason than just to look across like, oh my God, look at everything that they have. It's unbelievable. So for them to take time to come to these trainings, you know how powerful that is for the teachers. And I just lift them up so much and appreciate the administrators that are those kind of leaders. Amazing. Amazing.
Great.
Well, thank you guys. I can't thank you enough. I just really appreciate it. I love doing these. You can see why. It's just such a joyful thing. And this is the kind of thing, putting it out on YouTube where any teacher in the world can benefit from our conversation, or make them think or make them push back or whatever. Open the conversation, look at the gifts that these kids bring, and spreading that message far and wide is what we really need in our profession. So rock on.
I'm waiting for book 2. You know that, right?
Yeah. Come help me write it. We're right on it.
No, Teresa, I'm waiting for Teresa's book. Come on.
I need to write a book.
Yeah,
K-12
do.
Yeah, because I've been in it.
Every time she has a PD notes all full, she needs to write a book.
Teresa, you probably already have the book. You know, I mean, if you're blogging or if you're doing a lot of things and you have the notes from it, it's there. It just needs to be.
I've worn many hats, and I've been an administrator, elementary, middle, and high. And my husband is from Guatemala, so him and Emily have similar stories. And Yeah, I need to do that. So my goal is to try to start that this summer when we work those 10-hour days. So we'll see.
Yay! Oh, I
We'll
can't.
be doing your book study next year.
Oh, gosh.
All right, ladies, I'm going to go.
Love you.
I appreciate you all so much. And if anybody needs me, you can find me on Twitter at MSSalvac. Emily is at Emily Fran ESL. Sarah is at Sarah Davis ESL, right?
Yes.
Teresa, tell me your Twitter handle again.
Palma.Teresa, I believe.
Palma.Teresa.
13.
Palma Teresa 13.
Yeah. You know.
Come find us on Twitter. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.